Thanks to everybody for joining us for the 2020 USCAA Virtual Convention. You're joining us here now for the town hall sessions for national championships. For anybody who was not in the State of the Association and who does not know me, my name is Matt Sims and I'm the Executive Director of the USCAA. Again, the USCAA, as a member-driven organization, provides this opportunity for town hall sessions to give our member institutions the chance to provide feedback on critical processes and procedures of the USCAA. This isn't so much a time to ask open-ended questions related to the topics at hand, but more so for you, our member institutions, to give us feedback and to allow for our standing committees the opportunity to digest that feedback and provide recommendations to the national office on positive change moving forward with our national championship events. Before we jump into the material, I want to talk real briefly about the process. Obviously, the Zoom session may be new to some of you. What's going to happen is we're going to go through each of the topics as proposed either from the USCAA national office or from our membership. Once I get through the topic and sort of describing the topic at hand, we'll provide the opportunity for membership to speak. If you look at your screen in the Zoom, there is an icon at the bottom that says raise your hand. If you wish to speak, simply click on that icon and I'll be notified by one of our staff members here. And what we'll do is we'll turn on your microphone at that point and we will call your name. What we ask you to do is to restate your name and the institution that you represent prior to speaking. You'll provide any and all feedback. We may give some feedback here. Generally, we're just recording your ideas, and that's going to recommendations, again, for the Standing Committee for National Championships. If you do have some questions, we're happy to answer those. But again, this is really built for you to provide feedback to us. I'm going to go ahead and start my screen share. If you just give me a second. And we will jump into it. As I noted before in the State of the Association, we will have a Q&A at the end of this content to talk specifically about COVID-19 related materials. The first topic at hand are championship dates for 2021. As each of you know, we had to make the move to suspend our fall championships. And as we've stated, the USCAA continues with the strategy of being ready to play and being ready to provide the opportunities to our membership. As such, thus far, what you're looking at are the dates that are projected for our national championships for 2021. Basketball is probably going to be one of the toughest ones, really just related to our facility needs and that of Virginia State. So March 28th through April 1st is about as far back as we're able to push basketball. Volleyball is projected and available for April 15th through the 17th. Golf, May 9th through the 11th, giving as much opportunity for Northeast schools to participate as possible. The Small College World Series will remain the same dates as originally projected as May 16th through the 20th. Soccer projected for May 17th through the 21st, and we're continuing communication right now with the cross-country coaches committee to look at what the best dates possible for cross-country would be in 2021, and we're going to take their recommendations very strongly at hand. At this time, I'll open it up for any comments, questions, concerns from the membership who are here present. Well, this is a new format, so I'll give it just a second to make sure that nobody has any comments from the membership. Last opportunity for anybody to use the raise your hand icon at the bottom of the screen. Okay, we will be moving on. Topic number 2, again from the national office, and is related to changes made due to the impacts from COVID-19. Really, this is an opportunity for us just to discuss with you at this time our contingency plans. As we all know, due to the impacts of COVID-19 and from the start of this, when it happened in March to today, it's been a fluid process. I do want to commend the Board of Directors for implementing and approving the recommendations from the USCAA Eligibility Committee that provides some stability to our member institutions to be able to advise student athletes based off of ongoing eligibility, the new institutional guidelines, as well as not counting seasons of competition in 2020 and 2021. However, we want the membership to realize that this continues to be a fluid process as we move into 2021 and being prepared and ready to return to play and for the USCAA to host national championships. In saying that, we still understand that many institutions, the USCAA has member institutions in 27 states. Each of these states is going to have different regulations, and those regulations are going to be different, from state and even potentially local municipalities. We live in Norfolk, Virginia, and Hampton Roads was just put under different regulations than the state due to increases in COVID-related impacts here. So with all of that said, the USCAA is going to do its greatest work in trying to host national championships for our members, but we want members to understand that tournaments may not look exactly like they have before. Tournament field sizes may drop if we aren't able to get enough member institutions to attend, and those formats will have to be revised as such. The USCAA could create probably about 10 to 15 different scenarios right now of saying what field sizes would be, and most likely we'll end up going with whatever the 16th scenario is. With that said, we are going to be prepared, and we want our member institutions to be prepared and understand that these are difficult times, they're unprecedented times, and the tournaments may look different, and just work with us in understanding that. So at this time, I'll open it up. Are there any questions or feedback, suggestions related to postseason format and field size for 2021? Okay, we have a raised hand, and BJ?
Yes, we have a raised hand from Robin Martin. Robin, give me just 1 second. I will activate your microphone. Okay, Robin, you're activated as a panelist. You can address the floor.
I just wanted to see if anybody was monitoring the chat, because I saw that Andy had put something in for the last topic. So that was all. I was really just trying to make sure somebody was seeing what was going on in the chat.
Yeah, BJ just alerted me actually after we presented topic number 2 that there was a chat. We really certainly encourage, I understand we're in a different virtual format, but we encourage discussion from the members if possible. We understand that some people might not have the same microphone capabilities, so we can go back to the chat if anybody wants to make comments there as well.
I have another raised hand from Andy Manili. Andy, give me 1 second while I promote you to a panelist. Andy, when you unmute, you'll have the floor.
Yeah, as far as using the chat, it was mainly a question that I was kind of hoping that other people might chime in on, just as far as like with the first point, I have a volleyball and basketball dual athlete, so this is really going to affect her, as far as the championship dates. It wasn't a question that I was trying to, to get an answer on. I was really trying to see if it would generate any discussion amongst the ADs as far as who else is going to be affected by that kind of, dual sport. That's what I was using the chat for.
Sure, and that's fine. And member institutions can communicate back and forth. We're going to recognize the raised hands for this session, but it's always great when members are able to work together to solve problems. And again, I highlight that there are a lot of unprecedented problems that are coming out of COVID-19 related issues. That dual sport athlete is one of them. Unfortunately, that's not one that we can necessarily address at the national level, and that has to be handled at the institutional level. The USCAA is doing everything that we can to provide a healthy and safe atmosphere for student athletes who are traveling to play for a championship. Do you have another raised hand?
Yes. Hillary, I see that you have a raised hand. Give me 1 second. I'll activate your microphone. As soon as you unmute, you'll have the floor.
Thank you, BJ. This is maybe a comment more than a question, but with all the COVID-related things, there are pockets of the country that are, relatively safe. So I just want to make sure that somebody somewhere is considering maybe for this year only some sort of regionalized competition instead of national, if that's not something that will be able to be done come spring.
Great comment, Hillary. And yes, as we work on the back end here in the national office, there are several contingency plans that go beyond national championships. And we're in communication with each of our hosts and making them aware. As all of you know, a lot goes into hosting a national championship. There are a lot of contractual obligations and financial obligations from the USCAA and from many other stakeholders. So we want to do our best to try to operate as we have in the past, but we will be laying out sort of metrics and milestones over the course of the next couple months to determine whether that's going to be possible or not. If that is not possible, one of the things that we have talked about are regional USCAA invitationals that are membership hosted. And we will be sending out communication to many of our members here soon to see interest in our member institutions who, again, may be interested in hosting one of those events should that come to pass. So great comment, certainly something that is on our minds and something that we're discussing daily here.
Matt, we have another comment in the chat concerning men's and women's soccer, asking if Division I and Division II may merge.
If Division I and Division II may merge, that was a question in the comment section. This is a possibility. It's not one that we like, and it's not one that we want. But if it comes to pass that there are still these sections or red cells across the country, and it's going to affect the ability to even host a championship in one of our or more of our divisions, then that is a contingency that we would consider is this year just hosting one championship for each sport. We're seeing no other comments. Again, this is an opportunity for feedback and for your perspective on different issues. More important to hear from you than it is for me just to answer questions that will be addressed in internal communication. Okay, looks like we have a raised hand.
Yes, we've got Bruno. Let me allow you to talk. As soon as you unmute, you have the floor, Bruno.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, Bruno, go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk. The one thing I have in terms of the format for men's soccer, for example, I noticed this year we were invited and we were seated number 3, and the way the scheduling is, we had to play back-to-back days. Second seed had to play back-to-back days, but the 6th seed had to play one day, got rest, played another day. Is there a way that, since we're the higher seed or there's a higher seed, shouldn't they have the better of the schedule because they should be rewarded for what they did throughout the season versus the 6th seed that, they're lower ranked?
Thanks, Bruno. Appreciate the comment. And that's certainly something that can be talked about with the soccer coaches committee, and we'll forward that on. Right now, and based on how I remember things being built out from that committee and from feedback when we first went to the FIFA style, was that it was built such that the 1 seed played on days 1 and 2 and then got the rest moving into the championship. So it was built on that philosophy of trying to give the better, I don't want to say advantage, but the better schedule to the 1 seed. However, that these things are always up for debate, and I'll make sure that we add that to new business for the sport committee so that they can at least take a look at it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bruno. Any additional questions, comments? Okay. Hearing none, we will jump into COVID-related material. I know everybody is most focused on this, so it's probably the reason that we did not hear a lot of town hall topics from the membership. This discussion is going to concern COVID-19 as it pertains to restrictions on travel, practice, competition, and additionally, we can have a dialogue on return to play guidelines and best practices. We had one hand raised. Okay, let's jump to Corey real quick if it was related to the last topic. I know this is new for everybody.
Corey, as soon as you unmute, you'll have the floor.
Nope, sorry. I did not mean to hit that. Sorry.
All right. Well, as I mentioned, we'll jump into COVID-related materials and Q&A. The first thing that I want to do, though, is highlight all of the actions that have been taken by the USCAA National Office and the Board of Directors to this point, just so that we're recapping and all of our members who are present or will watch later sort of understand. I'll go through a timeline of how COVID-19 has impacted us. As has been stated before, the pandemic hit in March as we were right in the middle of our basketball national championships. We had several updates that were going out through the week of the championship, and we tried to do our best to get through that event. Unfortunately, that was not possible, as in the end, we felt that the health and safety of all that were involved was too critical to continue. Final communication came out on March 12th when we suspended the tournament. The week of March 17th, we distributed 2 pieces of communication to the membership, alerting members that we were attempting to review plans in hopes that we could host the Small College World Series. Again, as we all know, based on expert reports and projections, that also was not possible, and we canceled spring championships. March 27th, the USCAA updated the membership on the convention, letting them know that this event would be held virtual. We moved now to May, and on May 6th, the first communication came out regarding the fall season of competition, identifying key factors related to being able to play in the fall and the USCAA's ready-to-play philosophy. On May 28th, the USCAA announced the board decision to modify ongoing eligibility rules. I won't go over each of those rules because as we know, those have changed. Essentially, we had gone from 24 credits to 16 credits, but I won't review all of those in full. Throughout the month of May and June, we also published key survey results from USCAA members, administrators, and the like related to COVID-19 and USCAA members' ability to compete and travel. On July 13th, based on that feedback, we made the decision to postpone fall national championships and find alternative dates in the spring. And then finally, on August 7th, we announced the board's decision to implement institutional eligibility guidelines for next year for GPA, and for the next 2 years for normal progress. Additionally, we decided not to count seasons of competition for USCAA student athletes this year. I hope each of you have seen that memo. If you have not, it is posted on the USCAA website where we have COVID-related materials and links to each of those releases from the USCAA. At this time, I'll open it up for a Q&A from our members related to COVID-19, future planning, and the like. Hearing nothing yet, this is an opportunity to provide feedback on any of the policies that are in place, questions on those policies, questions about the future of return to play.
We do have a raised hand from Andy Maneely. Andy, as soon as you unmute, you'll have the floor.
Yeah, this is Andy at Mid-Atlantic. I think the biggest, kind of hardest thing to develop a question on this is that I think so many states are getting so many different guidelines, and I can say coming out of North Carolina, our guidelines are awful. Just as far as there's, you know, it's kind of all getting thrown back on, you know, a lot of people. So I think that, you know, looking at restrictions on travel, it's, you know, it's kind of like, I would like to hear from other states as far as, you know, what are other states getting from their guidelines? You know, because I mean, we've got to factor that in with, you know, dealing with, you know, interstate, you know, competitions and all that.
Thanks, Andy, and it's a great point, and one that makes, it's probably the single most point that makes this entire situation complex when it comes from, you know, our perspective of trying to host a national event. Obviously, our member institutions are impacted with their schedules of wondering at the point in time when we come back to play whether or not they're going to be able to have a schedule that's outside of their state, or whether quarantine practices for any given state are going to make that impossible. So, you know, again, it highlights the complexity. You know, really, we'll continue to look at CDC recommendations, and we will certainly require that member institutions are following their state and local guidelines before we move forward with turn into a championship or a national championship format. Any other questions related to COVID-19? I thought I was expecting more here. There's a comment. I think we have a raised hand first. Sorry.
We do. Dalton, give me 1 second. There you go. As soon as you unmute, you will have the floor.
Hey, Matt. Hey, everyone. First, I just want to thank you all for the excellent communication you've had during this entire process. It's been really beneficial, especially for our institution. My question is kind of more generic as far as dual membership goes. We are a member of both the USCAA and the NCCAA. With the current guidelines in the NCCAA, there is no stoppage date of competition as there is in the USCAA with the November 22nd date. Is there going to be a conflict with that, or has there been any discussion about dual membership and maybe the contradictions in policies?
There has, and there's been specifically, when it comes to all of the feedback that's come in from member athletic directors after those policies were instituted, the one that you've identified of the stop date from November to January 1 is probably one of the most considerate, or the one more abundantly talked about. One of the things that the USCAA is looking at right now internally is speaking to our legal representation to ensure that if we were to submit a liability waiver to our members or something of that sort, that the USCAA would not be held accountable should there be legal action taken against a member institution. And generally, when you talk about regular season play, in most instances, that is institutional based. And still, we want to make sure that we are dotting all of our I's and crossing all of our T's and ensuring that as a governing body, the policies that we institute are adhered to and or do not place us in, again, any liability situation. So we'll be in contact with the membership soon about that particular time frame of November 22nd through January 1, again, once we have full feedback from our legal team.
Matt, we do have another raised hand from Corey. Corey, as soon as you unmute, you'll have the floor.
Hi guys, it's Nick Dimitrievsky. How are you? Brian Stratton.
Hey Nick, doing well.
Good. Just a quick question. With the new rule that institutions can access the eligibility for the upcoming year, does that mean initial criteria to be eligible as well?
Nick, can you repeat that question? You're breaking up a little bit.
Yeah. With the new rule that institutions can access the eligibility for the year, does that mean initial criteria to be eligible as well? Like a kid would have, for example, would have needed 24 with the 2.0. Does that now
Correct.
mean that the institutions can sort that out, or do they still need to meet?
That's correct. So, yeah. So what's going to happen is now institutional guidelines need to be developed internally by member institutions this year with regards to both GPA in order to play, as well as ongoing eligibility, that being what is normal progress requirements for a student athlete to be able to play. In the fall of 2021, USCAA GPA restrictions will continue, and the member institutions will still have internal on the ongoing. And really the reason and philosophy behind all of that is that we recognize that there may be a lot of student athletes who don't return to school this fall, whether it be because of fears of COVID-related issues, whether it be because they can't travel from the state that they live in, or they're out of the country. So we understand that, especially for normal progress, there's just going to be so many students who are impacted by that. And that's why we have implemented now for 2 years, member institutions will determine institutional guidelines for normal progress. And it's much like in the NCAA Division III, excuse me.
And initial eligibility, correct, Matt? So coming in for the fall.
Well, the USCA, if you're referring to a transfer, yes. First year students, freshmen, still must have high school GPA and all the things that the bylaws require. But if you're talking about a transfer, yes.
Thank you.
Going to keep an open opportunity for about 30 seconds here.
So we do have another statement coming in from the chat, asking if there is a timeline for when the decision on a waiver of some kind would be available.
Wait, repeat that, BJ, when there's a decision on a...
Is there a timeline for when that decision on a waiver of some kind will be available?
I'm if the person who submitted that is available to talk, I think we need a little more details.
I have some clarification as it pertains to the practice and competition for dual sports. There we go. Clint, give me 1 second. As soon as you unmute, you'll have the floor.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Hey, Clinton.
Hey, yeah, with regard to, somebody asked a question about schools that are dual affiliated, whether it be with the NCCAA, NCAA, or NAIA, and how, the conflicting guidelines on dead period or when you can and cannot practice. I was wondering if there is a timeline on when the waiver that you had mentioned, when that decision would be made. Are you guys looking at making that decision to offer that in September, October? Is there any sort of timeline?
Oh, no, this is right away. I mean, we want to get on top of this and try to provide some feedback to the members, hopefully by next week.
Gotcha. Obviously, being a member of solely the USCAA, from a competition standpoint and a competitive balance, that's something that would be concerning on our end. Just if other schools are able to practice through that period and we cannot, obviously there's a little bit of a competitive advantage there.
Yeah, it's a great point, Clinton, and certainly something that we want all of our members to know that is being discussed on the back end. And,
Sure.
While the USCAA is unique in serving small colleges, some of whom are dual affiliates, and there's rules on the books right now with related to maximum contests and so forth that are going to be a little bit different between sole USCAA members and members outside of the USCAA. We want you to know that we're having those conversations and we're talking about the balance between keeping everyone safe and healthy, and then the balance of competitive balance and making sure that everybody is going by the same guidelines. In the end, the health and safety of our student athletes is going to win, and we're going to do the best that we can to try to have guidelines that everybody can use and can be the same. So it's again, I reiterate, as much as we don't like it, this year is going to look different than other years, but we're going to get through it, and we're going to do the best that we can to continue to serve the best interests of our small college members. We have a hand raised.
Yeah, Matt, we have another hand from Rob Geddes. Rob, as soon as you unmute, you'll have the floor.
Hey guys, Rob Geddes from Andrews University. Matt, my question is in relationship to that moratorium on play as well. If we do not allow students to practice or play from November 22 until January, would we be wise to give a couple week reorientation so that we can condition our athletes again before we get into games?
Rob, great point. Something that has come up from a few people now, and something that we will pass along to the championship subcommittee for discussion as we move forward. We certainly don't want to have any rules that puts our student athletes in harm. Now, I'll go one step further just to go back, take a step back and talk a little bit about that period of November 22nd through January 1st and where that came from. Based on expert opinions that we're seeing that President Mike Fisher has been discussing with presidents all across the Northeast of the United States, there appears to be a strong opportunity that flu season could really compound the issues related to COVID-19 and really make it hairy. It's the reason why a lot of institutions who are returning to brick and mortar educational delivery this fall have decided to shut down that face-to-face at the Thanksgiving break. We've seen it time and time again from our member institutions all the way up to Division I institutions across the country. And so there's just concern that competition during that period and during a period where there is a considerable chance of the spread of COVID-19 that we make it a more safe environment. And really, this is about doing the best that we can in any situation to keep our kids safe. If we, as institutions, are returning to play, that's the best that we're going to ask from you. That's the best that anyone can ask, is that we're doing the best and doing all that we can in order to keep our kids healthy. Seeing no other chat discussion. I'm hearing nothing else. We'll move on. The final opportunity is opportunity for new business. Member institutions at this point, there won't be a lot of discussion about new business simply because most likely these are things that we haven't discussed, but this gives the membership an opportunity and a forum to provide topics for USCAA national championships that will be passed along either to our sport committees or to the USCAA Standing Committee for National Championships. So I'll provide a brief opportunity for any new business.
We do have a raised hand. Looks like Paul Hogan. Paul, as soon as you unmute, you'll have the floor.
Thanks for all the great work you guys are doing as well. I assume that if the procedures for national championships or championships in the spring or regional championships, there'll be, if you have to create a whole new plan of action, that you'll have some sort of a process for groups that, or a school that the college wants to host a championship or a regional or something like that. You'll create some sort of a process for that.
Yeah, that's right, Paul. And just to provide some feedback, and we'll be talking about this a lot more in committee here soon. But you know, right now we know that it's a contingency. We know that the regional format is a contingency, and based on the best feedback that I can give you right now, we also realize that we're going to need the assistance and infrastructure of member institutions to make that happen. The discussions and the next step for us are really breaking down the finances of hosting a tournament. As we all know, I mean, there's considerable costs and ones that we understand that our member institutions don't necessarily want to assume. But at the same time, understanding that there's a lot of income that is not going to be assumed by the USCAA under these models. We would not receive our regional grant money from the city of Richmond. We would not be receiving ticket income. Meanwhile, we're still going to be having to hire officials and pay for staff. So there are some complexities to the finances of it. That's what we're working on the back end, and hopefully we'll have more information within the next, say, month or so on what that looks like, again, as a contingency plan. Thanks, Paul. Any additional discussion?
Yep.
Have a raised hand.
We've got, looks like Chuck Charles from Johnson & Wales. As soon as you unmute, Chuck, you'll have the floor.
Hey, Matt, just a quick question. With the change in dates, are all the venues for the national championships still the same?
Yeah, there's no change currently to the venues. All of the proposed dates are under the assumption that we will still host a national championship and in the locations that we had planned. Again, the only contingency to that would be regional formats.
Okay, great.
Final opportunity, any new business? Any further questions? Great, looks like we will wrap up early. I want to thank everybody for joining us for the town hall for national championships. Looks like we're going to have a little longer break than it planned. We will return as originally scheduled at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time for our town hall for USCAA ratings and selections. Thanks, and we'll see you soon.